tonight. But 15 minutes later, I think it's a new record. I couldn't sort of do anything about it. I was sort of on a Google support chat, and I kind of had to complete it. So I kind of couldn't leave in the middle of the thing. It was quite an important thing I needed to resolve. So anyway, here I am. I just need to open up so I can see your messages. Meanwhile, I think Timmy wants to say hello. I've had a really not great day, although I guess it was not bad given the circumstances. We had about a 10 or 11 hour power failure. So from about 11 o'clock this morning till about 9 o'clock tonight, we've had no power, just nothing. So I did make the best of it. Do you guys know what a delicious monster is? Corporal Deb, good to see you. Nisi, Susan Becker, Batman. See, Batman's been doing some handstands on the beach. Yvonne Phillips, good to see you guys. Madeline Jimenez. Corporal Deb says why. I'm not quite sure. I think I'm not really sure why the power was out. It wasn't national. So I'm not quite sure what the story is. I don't know. A delicious monster is a plant with huge leaves, like elephant ear size. And I actually had one on the side of my computer. Used to be in the lounge, but it got enormous, and the cat started using it as a jungle gym. So I moved it here, but I didn't really like the way it sort of started to fill up this entire office. So I used a power failure to do a number of things. One of them was to move the delicious monster into the kitchen courtyard. So that's where it is now. I hope it's going to survive being outside. It is quite sheltered, but anyway, we'll see. By the way, the background is, I think at the point that I made this particular, what do you call it? It's not a portrait, framed work. I'd written something like 96 books. You can see there's a space there where there are a couple of books missing. One of those books missing is this one, Bloodline Murmurs of Earth. Another one is Neverest 4, and I'm not quite sure what the others are, but I wasn't quite at 100 books when I did this, but yeah. So Nisi says making the best of it. Yeah, what else did I do? I cleaned out this office and found a couple of things that I guess I can show you. I'm not sure if I've shown you this before. Have you seen this? This is a kind of a shopping bag from the Van Gogh Museum, appropriately yellow on the other side. The painting comes to me as if in a dream. And weirdly enough, when I turn my computer on now, I don't know if you guys have got Windows 10. When I turn my computer on now, the opening screen was actually a Van Gogh painting, which is quite weird. I've also got some other notes that I actually made when I was in the Van Gogh Museum. But because we don't really have much time, I'm not going to go through them right now. Timmy, should we go through these notes, Timmy? I'm not going to go through them now, but Yvonne says I'm a big fan of Neverest 4. Cool. Yeah, so Timmy, can I put you down? So I've also got a smaller thing of the books that I've written, and the the thing that's quite interesting with this is it's chronological. So this is the first book I ever wrote, second, third, and so on. And so you can see it started off with Oscar Pistorius, and I wrote something like 14 books in that series. Then went on to Jodi Arias, right? And then from Jodi Arias to Amanda Knox, and from Amanda Knox to Stephen Avery and O.J. Simpson, and so on and so on. So quite interesting. The murder of Vincent van Gogh, I think, is over there. So it was quite late in my writing endeavors, right? So what is quite useful with this is it's the books that were written in the order, basically the order that they were written. I think the most likely book that I'm likely to add to all of this is Treachery 3, Veil of Tears. So that might sort of come somewhere here. I was working on the Treachery trilogy when the Chris Watts case happened. Another book that I might do is The Ivorian in the Amanda Knox series. And a third possibility that I might work on is, I'm just trying to see where it is here. Yeah, so anyway, one of them would be Stephen Avery. And then there's another one, I'm just trying to think what it is again. In the Scott Peterson case. I just don't quite see it there. Where's the Scott Peterson case? Oh, it's right here at the bottom. So the Scott Peterson case, the fourth book in that series would have been Weight of the World. So that was another one I was working on. So I've actually got quite a few books that I worked on that I'd never actually finished, that are sort of semi-written, but then sort of left hanging. So, yeah. Okay, so in this live stream, we're going to deal with Van Gogh. I see we are 32 people in chat, and we're almost at the 10-minute mark. I want to kind of get cracking because, the sooner we start, the more letters we can kind of go through. So I'm going to be using this source to read the first letter. It's a letter from Vincent van Gogh to the Hanebeek family, written on the 7th of August, 1873. And I think he was in England for about 2 years, 1873 to 1875. I'll confirm that in a second. If you want to follow with me, it's at this link, especially if you are on your desktop or something like that. Let me just confirm how long he was in London. So he was in London from June 1873 to May 1875, so almost 2 years. And while he was there, he sort of changed direction. He stopped working as an art dealer, and that's kind of a question that we need to sort of ponder while we go through these letters is, let's see how well you guys know Van Gogh. Why do you think he started to, hi Sharon, good to see you. Why do you think Van Gogh started to change his mind? Do you think it was because he didn't like art? Do you think, what do you think changed? What do you think lay behind this sort of change of heart? Anyone have any idea? Nisi says payment, lack of, so kind of implying that he wasn't happy with how much money he was making. I don't think it was really that. Paddy says he felt a higher calling to serve God. That's quite a good answer. Corporal Deb says, I think maybe the people around him. Robin says he needed to express himself. I think that's also true. Sharon Lynn, loneliness. It's also somewhat true. Yvonne says, I know he wanted to become a minister or something. Batman says, God's plan. All of you are right to a certain extent, but the source of all of this, let's call it inspiration, was basically a mixture of him becoming lonely and dissatisfied in his work, but also at the same time he was reading and he was getting inspiration for a certain way of living. And bear in mind, he's 20 years old, he's very idealistic, and he's seeing the world a certain way. And I must say, when I went to England, I was about 27 when I went to England. I was actually pretty idealistic myself, and I kind of didn't like money. I didn't like material. I didn't like the whole thing of you must work and being a part of a materialistic society. And that's fair and well, but everyone's got to make a living somewhere. It's fair and well to have some of those idealistic reservations, but you've still got to make a living, kind of thing. So Nisi says, what is life all about? I think that was very much part of what he was thinking. Paddy says, wasn't he affected by the poverty of men in London? Absolutely, that's a great point. He was affected by the poverty, and he started to see himself in a different light. I think he saw being an art dealer as something that was just not cutting it for him. He wasn't being fulfilled. He thought he had a higher calling in a way. Corporal Deb said, I think he had a lot of arguments with Bernard. I'm not sure if that's relevant right here. I'm not sure if that's kind of happening at this point. But I want you to think about him going through this change of heart while we go through these letters, because that's what's happening. And I want you to also pay attention to the things that are influencing him. And in a way, it's quite sad. In a way, the things that are influencing him are sort of starting to divert his path down the route that his life is going to go. And, it's going to end unhappily ever after. One of the last things he said was, the sadness is going to last forever. So in a sense, you've got to feel a bit of a fateful sense of tragedy around these things that are so bright and seem so affirming. And ultimately, he goes down the path that he goes. What I mean is, from our perspective, the journey that he took was ultimately an incredible story, an incredible adventure. And at the end of it, we are bequeathed with these wonderful letters and the wonderful art. But for Van Gogh himself, he had to go through some tremendous travails, some tremendous suffering, and some tremendous hardship himself. And the irony is that all of this was his own doing. He chose to give up his job. He chose to give up his life in a way. He chose to go the route that he did. And so what we want to look at, what this young man was preoccupying himself with, in terms of that question. Robbie Robbins says he was restless. Sharon Lynn says, welcome to everyone coming in. Not there yet says, didn't his father want to commit him to a mental institution at one point? He did. Him and his father had quite a weird relationship. He was sort of following his father's footsteps, also wanting to become a pastor, but then eventually not even wanting to be a pastor at all. Okay, so are you guys ready to get to the first letter? See, we're almost at 15 minutes. Yvonne says, so he was being educated to an alternative. Yeah. Are you guys ready to get started? Sharon says yes. Okay, so in In the London period, there are, let me just count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 letters. So 25 letters deal with the London period, and then he goes to Paris and Eton. And then I think he actually returns to England. And then from there he goes to Dordrecht, then Amsterdam, then Belgium, then Eton, then The Hague, then Drenthe, then Newnan, then Antwerp, then Paris, and then the ending in Hull. So if you just think about it in one sweep, it's very itinerant. He's moving around very restlessly, and it's quite chaotic. And I think the chaos of his movements mirrors sort of the chaos of his heart, right? Okay, so here we go. Letter from Vincent van Gogh, London, 7 August 1873. We've already dealt with, I think, three of his letters in London, and we're going to try and get through the remaining 20 or so. Nisi says, wish he could have made it to that age, 70. Yeah, okay, so he writes the following. Dear friends, this is a letter to the Van Stockham Hanebeek family, 7 August 1873 from London. Dear friends, it was a pleasant surprise to me to receive Caroline's letter. Thanks. With all my heart, I hope she's quite well again. A good thing it is over now. In your next letter, I should like to hear more about that last play you wrote. I was really amazed. For 10 characters, it must be the biggest you have done. So already you're getting a glimpse that his pals are sort of arty types and they are writing plays, right? You get the sense that his friends are sort of also, in a way, occupying an alternate universe. They're arty types, I guess. Then he says, these last days I've greatly enjoyed reading the poems of John Keats. That's what he's doing. He's reading poetry. He is a poet who I think is not known very well in Holland. He is the favorite of all the painters here. And so I started reading him. So that's the reason he gives for starting to read John Keats. He finds out that all the local painters, all the English painters, all the people painting in England are reading John Keats. And I certainly, we studied John Keats as kids at school. So he's a well-known English poet. He says, here is something by him. His best-known piece is The Eve of St. Agnes, but it is a bit too long to copy. And so at the end of this letter, he actually copies a John Keats poem. We'll get to that in a moment. He says, I have visited neither Crystal Palace nor the Tower yet, nor Tussaud. And there he's talking about Madame Tussaud, the wax museum. So they've asked him, have you been to the Crystal Palace? Have you been to the Tower of London? And he says he hasn't. He says, I'm not in a hurry to see everything. For the present, I'm quite satisfied with the museums, parks, etc. They interest me more. So he's kind of saying, I'm not really here to see tourist attractions. I'm here to see the museums. He's quite a studious fellow. He's quite a serious chap, isn't he? Then he says, last Monday, I had a nice day. The first Monday in August is a holiday here. I went with one of the Germans to Dulwich, or is it Dulwich, an hour and a half outside London to see the museum there. And after that, we took about an hour's walk to another village. So how I understand that is he walked an hour and a half to a museum, and then he walked another hour to another village. So 2.5 hours, which is quite a long walk. He says the countryside is so beautiful here. Many people who have their businesses in London live in some village outside London and go to town by train every day. So what he's saying here, I've obviously been in England, I've been in the Netherlands as well. There certainly are incredibly beautiful spots in England. It was possibly a lot more beautiful in that time, but it's interesting how he's finding England more beautiful than the Netherlands, which I think is kind of a grayer, more overcast, more sort of miserable place in certain areas. It's sort of like a watery, overcast sort of place, often more so than England. And so he's just finding the countryside so much more beautiful. Bear in mind, the Netherlands doesn't have hills, and it's not very mountainous. It's more like depressions and low-lying, whereas England is a very varied landscape. It's also got a lot of coastline as well. Anyway, so he goes on to say, something about that he might do the same thing, live in a village outside London and go by train every day. That kind of suggests that he's not really enjoying London very much. So, because he says, perhaps I shall do the same shortly if I can find a cheap room somewhere. But moving is so horrible that I shall stop here as long as possible, although everything is not so beautiful as it seemed to me in the beginning. So that's quite an important thing already coming out here. He's saying moving is horrible, and one wonders what he means by that. Does he mean the sheer exertion of moving, like lugging your bags around? Does he mean the terror of, a different, different dispensation and, all of those things that are involved in traveling? Anyway, so clearly it was quite a horrible experience for him moving, the experience of dislocating himself from the Netherlands and moving to England. I've got to say, I kind of agree with that. I experienced the same thing. You move, but there's just so much, you can move once or so, but when you move quite a lot, it can be quite dislocating, and, it comes with a cost. So he says, I'll stop here as long as possible, although everything is not so beautiful as it seemed to me in the beginning. It's also quite an interesting comment that he makes. So he talks about the country so beautiful here. In the same paragraph, he's saying, you know what, everything is not so beautiful as it seemed to me in the beginning. Perhaps it is my own fault, so I shall bear with it a little longer. So here you can already tell in his writing, in his own words, that in a way is blaming himself, I think, for coming to London at all. He says, perhaps it is my own fault, so I shall bear with it a little longer. So he also seems to be saying, I'm going to just endure this. I did this, so I'm going to. I made my bed, so I'm going to have to sleep in it, kind of thing. So it does sound as though he's really not very happy. He's trying to make the most of it. He is, he is busy, but you kind of get the sense that the reason he's not going to these tourist attractions is he's not feeling terribly happy. Otherwise, probably he would. You do some things for entertainment. Then he says, pardon me if this letter is not as I should like it to be, for I'm writing in a hurry. I wanted to congratulate you on Willem's birthday and wish you many happy returns. I was most pleased to learn that you have renewed your acquaintance with the touristique family. I've been hoping you would for a long time. When you have a chance, please let me know what photographs you have received. I'm curious to know. I've had a letter from Marinus, from which I learned that he's going to Amsterdam. This will mean a great change for him. I hope he will do well. I was very glad he wrote to me. A few days ago, a brother of Itterson's paid me a call, and for the first time since May, I had a chance to speak Dutch. So there again, he's kind of giving you a glimpse of what he's really feeling. So he's saying, for the first time since May, so it's really June, July, August. So for the first time in about 3 months, he's speaking his native language. Now, that can definitely be a struggle when you go to another country and you can't even speak your language because no one does, right? So that can, just that on its own, just that one thing can be quite limiting. I lived in South Korea for 4 years, 5 years, and although there were a couple of expats there, most people there couldn't really speak English, and so in a way that crushes you in. It sort of makes you feel like an alien in a way. So anyway, he says, we live far apart, much to my regret. Good luck to you. Remember me to all in the potent. Good luck. Yours truly, Vincent. Then he says, gladden my heart with a letter as soon as you can find time. And then he provides a couple of poems. I think these are from John Keats. I'm not going to read the full poem. I'll read part of The Eve of St. Mark. Was written in 1818, and you can tell what is sort of cooking Van Gogh's goose, what he's paying attention to. So the poem reads, upon a Sabbath day it fell, twice holy was the Sabbath bell, that called the folk to evening prayer. The chilly sunset faintly told of unmatured green valleys cold, of the green thorny bloomless hedge, of rivers new with springtime sedge, of primroses by sheltered rills, of daisies on the Agish hill. Bertha was a maiden fair, dwelling in the old Minster Square. From her fireside she could see, sidelong its rich antiquity, far as the bishop's garden wall, where sycamores and elm trees tall, full-leaved the forest had outstripped, but no sharp north wind ever nipped, so sheltered by the mighty pile. All was silent, all was gloom. Abroad and in the homely room, down she sat, poor cheated soul, and struck a lamp from dismal coal, leaned forward with bright drooping hair, and slant book full against the glare, until she read, her shadow still glowed about as it would fill the room with wildest forms and shades, as though some ghostly queen of spades had come to mock behind her back, and dance and ruffle her garments black. Until she read the legend page of holy Mark from youth to age, on land, on sea, in pagan chains, rejoicing for his many pains. So you can kind of see that the way that this particular character is described, sitting by herself, a fair maiden, she's sort of sitting by herself, it's gloomy, it's quiet, she's a cheated soul, she turns her lamp on, and she reads a book. That is exactly what he's doing, right? So he obviously gets a feeling of is being soothed in a way that he's not alone in the world, that in terms of his circumstances. Then he actually wrote under this poem, he wrote, the imagination, meaning John Keats' imagination, may be compared to Adam's dream. I think he means Adam and Eve, so Adam dreaming in the Garden of Eden. He says, the imagination may be compared to Adam's dream. He awoke and found it truth. And so it seems like that's what Van Gogh's saying, is he read this poem and was awoken by the truth of it, if that makes sense. Then he wrote another poem on the same page, and it's just called Autumn. It's quite a short poem. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend to the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless, with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, the full all fruit with ripeness to the core. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. So at this time, Van Gogh was 20 years old, and this was the stuff that he was reading. So now we go into the next not poem, the next letter, and it's written about a month later. So he wasn't really writing that often, and I guess he wasn't really getting that many letters either, but he did want to get letters. And so this is written to his brother Theo on the 13th of September, 1873. Dear Theo, in my letter to Uncle Hein, I enclosed a little note for you. I wonder if you were in Halford for Mother's birthday and how you enjoyed it. Did you get my letter and the lithograph after Wissenbroek, which I put in the box with the pictures? Oh, old man, I so want that you come here to see my new lodgings, the one I've already spoken about to you. I now have a bedroom such as I always longed for, without a sloping ceiling and without blue wallpaper with green fringes. I lodge with some charming people now. They keep a school for little boys. Excuse me. So it looks like he's actually moved at this point. He's actually changed his dwellings. And it also is quite interesting that he says he's always longed to have a bedroom that doesn't have a sloping ceiling. So if you know the Dutch, they have very steep sort of gabled ceilings, some of them. In fact, I think a house built by my grandfather, it's not too far from where I'm sitting right now, it's got an extremely steep ceiling. And so anyway, he's just saying, I just would love to be in a bedroom that doesn't have a sloped ceiling. And of course, in the room that he died, that actually had a sloped ceiling as well in Hull. In Orvez-sur-Oise, also had a sloped ceiling. Okay, so he goes on to say, on Saturday, some time ago, I went boating on the Thames in the company of 2 Englishmen. It was glorious. So there you're getting a sense that he's mixing a bit with the locals, is having some fun, but it's few and far between. I mean, he says one Saturday some time ago. So it's like this one day I did something that was kind of fun. I kind of had a similar experience when I was in England. Every now and then I'd have sort of some great experiences with the locals, but it wasn't necessarily of a continuous basis because I kind of moved around. And, you know, I went with some surfers to the west of England. I can't really remember, but that was quite a cool experience. And anyway, lots and lots of these experiences, but they were not like continuous. And there were a couple of reasons for that, which I won't go into here. Anyway, he says, yesterday I saw an exhibition of Belgian art where I noticed many of the same pictures that were at the Brussels exhibition. There were several beautiful things by Alb and Julien de Vriend, Claysenaar, Wouters, Koesmans, Gabriel, de Champfalier, etc. Have you ever seen anything by Terlinden? If so, tell me about it. It was a real pleasure to see those Belgian pictures. The English ones are, with a few exceptions, very bad and uninteresting. So that's quite interesting also that he's not really enjoying the art setup in England. He's sort of finding although he's in England, he's finding the English art to be either bad or uninteresting. He's sort of in England and is enjoying art from across the channel, Belgian art, right? He says, some time ago I saw one which represented a kind of fish or dragon 6 yards long. It was awful. And then a little man who came to kill the above-mentioned dragon. I think the whole represented the Archangel Michael killing Satan. So he's talking about how he's finding English art just to be really distasteful. So you can kind of imagine if he's an art dealer, he's not really enjoying his work. But he's finding enjoyment in other things like English poetry, right? Then he says, adieu, boy, best wishes and write soon, Vincent. And then he adds a postscript and he says, another English picture is Satan possessing the herd of swine at the lake of Gadarena. It represented about 50 black pigs and swine running helter-skelter down the mountain and skipping over one another into the sea. But there was a very clever picture by Prince Sepp. Then he writes another postscript, I just received your letter. Going to The Hague will be a great change for you. I imagine it will be hard to leave beautiful, pleasant Brussels, but you will enjoy The Hague too. Thanks for what you wrote me about the pictures. That picture by Millet must have been splendid. Adieu, I will write soon again. So his brother is now about to go to The Hague where he's been working, the place that he's just left. So a month later, it's not clear exactly when in October this was written, but around about a month later, it's again to his friends, the Van Stockum Hanebeek family. Written from London in October 1873. Dear Caroline and Willem, many thanks for your letter of this morning. It was a delightful surprise. I'm glad you're doing so well. Our Anna has passed her English and her needlework examinations. You can imagine how delighted she is, as are we all. Pa and mother have proposed that she stay at school until next April and then try French, but she doesn't have to if she doesn't want to. I should like so much to find something for her here. You know, we have occasionally spoken about it. So I think when he talks about our Anna, I think he's talking about his sister. He's talking about her passing her, I guess, her school exams and how happy she is and how happy the whole family are. And Pa and mother wanted to stay at school until next April and learn French as well. And he is hoping that she's going to join him in England, right? He goes on to say, you have already heard that Theo is going to The Hague. I believed it will be a change for the better, though he will find it hard to leave that beautiful, pleasant Brussels. So him saying that he's going to find it hard to leave, I think he's sort of talking from experience, right? He goes on to say, some time ago, I received a letter from your pa also, to which I have replied. And so you will probably have heard that all is still going well with me here and some particulars about my new lodgings. What you say about winter is quite right. I completely agree. For myself, I can hardly decide which season I like best. I believe I like them all equally. It is worth noting that the old painters hardly ever painted autumn and that the modern ones have a predilection for it. Well, I must say I don't feel the same way as he does. I didn't really enjoy winters in the UK. Can't really say that. I kind of enjoyed winter in other parts of Europe because you can go skiing, and I went skiing in Austria. And so if you can do that, you can kind of make the most of it. But yeah, I'm not sure I particularly liked winter in England, and winter in the Netherlands must be not the easiest thing to get through. I went to the Netherlands in May and I found it pretty chilly. In fact, I kind of wanted to tell my hosts, do you mind cranking up the gas? And I think they did. And I was like, more, you know. So, here in South Africa, we used to sunshine day after day after day after day. We used to hot temperatures, let alone warm kind of thing. The big bummer about South Africa is, although we have cold winters, we don't get any snow, or we tend just not to get snow. There is snow here and there, but it melts almost a day or two after it's fallen. So there's just not much skiing that goes on here. And that was a real eye-opener going to Europe. It was just seeing that there's this whole fun wonderland waiting for you in winter, where you'd actually look forward to winter. Whereas here, yeah. I must say that's an aspect I can't really speak about in the Netherlands. I know they ice skate on the many canals, so it's almost like roller skating through whatever. The canals become channels for ice skating, and that probably is quite a lot of fun. There are all sorts of events involved with that as well, and never mind the bicycle races. So I suppose it could be quite fun in Holland in certain senses. So he goes on to say, enclosed are a few small photographs which I hope you will like. So what they're doing while they're sending these letters are also sending photos. Photos are kind of a modern a modern invention. The photo is a little bit like our social media today. It's kind of a new thing that everyone's enjoying, right? Just an ordinary photo. So he says, um, here you see hardly any albums like those in Holland, but so-called scrapbooks into which you put photographs like the ones in this letter. That is why we have the photographs unmounted here. The advantage is that you can arrange your photographs on the same page any way you like. I advise you to get a sort of copybook with white paper and begin by putting these in it. So that's kind of what is going on, scrapbooking, photo albums, it's starting to take off over there. Then he says, a baptism is after Anker, a Swiss who has painted a variety of subjects, all equally intimate and delicate of feeling. Puritans going to church is after Bouton, one of the best painters here. An American, he likes Longfellow very much, and rightly so. I know 3 pictures by him inspired by the courtship of Miles Standish. Don't know what any of this really means. Seeing these pictures has induced me to read Miles Standish and Evangeline again. So he's seeing pictures and then reading books. He says, I don't know why, but I never realized these poems were so fine as I think them now. Then he talks a bit more about another artist. I'm not really going to go into that. Talks about more painters. I'm not going to go into that. And then he says, and now I'm going to stop. I enclose another picture of autumn, this one by Michelet. I hope you will be able to read this. I've written on without considering that one must take care a letter is intelligible. Good point, Vincent, because I couldn't quite tell what that was about. Adieu, the best of luck to you all. Many kind regards to all at the Poten and any other friends you may meet, Vincent. And then there's an enclosure written in French. I'll just read the first paragraph. From here I see a lady. I see her walk pensively in a not very large garden, bereft of its flowers early in the season, but sheltered, as you see them behind our cliffs in France or the dunes of Holland. The exotic shrubs have already been put back in the conservatory. The fallen leaves reveal a number of statues, an artistic luxury which contrasts with the lady's very simple, modest, dignified dress, of which the black or grey silk is almost imperceptibly brightened by a lilac ribbon. But haven't I seen her already in the museums of Amsterdam or The Hague? She reminds me of the lady by Philippe de Champagne in the Louvre, who took my heart, so candid, so honest, sufficiently intelligent, yet simple, without the cunning to extricate himself from the ruses of the world. This woman has remained in my mind for 30 years, persistently coming back to me, making me say, but what was she called? What has happened to her? Has she known some happiness? And how has she overcome the difficulties of the world? And that's from Jules Michelet, something about aspirations in autumn or something. So you kind of get the feeling that either Vincent is sort of voyeuristically getting to know women in a way, or that he sees himself as this person, as this personality who's moving through the landscape. And one part that stands out where he says, without the cunning to extricate herself from the ruses of the world. Quite interesting words there. I must say there's a point where I've certainly felt like that. You sort of feel like I just don't have the wit to skate all the little rabbit holes of the world. And sometimes that feeling does overtake you again and again. You feel like, wow. So the previous letter was October. This is November 1873. So we're coming to the end of his first year in England, in London. This is also to Theo. Just have a look at some of your comments. Not there yet, or are you leaving? Oh, are you going to Banff? Okay. Yeah, Banff is a pretty good spot. Oh, for skiing. Okay. Okay, so let's go on to the next letter. 19 November 1873. Dear Theo, I want to be sure you hear from me soon after your arrival at The Hague. I'm eager to hear what your first impressions were of your new position and home. I hear that Mr. Schmidt gave you such a beautiful souvenir. That proves you have been very satisfactory in every respect. I'm glad that we now work in the same house of Goupil. Lately, we have had many pictures and drawings here. We sold a great many, but not enough yet. It must become something more established and solid. I think there is still much work to do in England, but it will not be successful at once. Of course, the first thing necessary is to have good pictures, and that will be very difficult. Well, we must take things as they are and make the best of it. I think there was a piano where he stayed, and I think one of the Germans played it. So, good observation. He goes on to say, how is business in Holland? Here, the ordinary engravings after Bouchard do not sell at all, and the good Buren engravings sell pretty well. We sell the Musée Goupil and Co. photographs only, blah, 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 on an average of 100 a day. I think you will like the work at the house at The Hague as soon as you have got used to it. I'm sure you will like your home with the Roos family. Walk as much as your time will allow. Give my best love to everybody at the Rooses. You must write me sometime whom you like best among the older painters as well as among the modern. So you can see the interest in art is definitely there. Is definitely, I mean, if you think about it, these letters he's writing to his brother, he could write about anything. He could write about girls, he could write about parties, he could write about tourist attractions, he could write about anything, and he's writing about art, right? So that definitely is a clear passion of his. And he's about to kind of turn his back on it. So he says, go to the museum as often as you can. It is a good thing to know the old painters also. If you have the chance, read about art, especially art magazines. And then he mentions Gazette des Beaux-Arts. As soon as I have the opportunity, I will send you a book by Berger about the museums at The Hague and Amsterdam. Please send it back when you have read it. He's going to send his brother a book about the museums in The Hague and Amsterdam, and then will his brother send the book back to him. Then he says, ask Itterson to write me when he has time, and especially to send me a list of the painters who have won awards at the Paris exhibition. Is Somerville still in the office, or did he leave when you arrived? I am all right. I have a pleasant home, and although the house here is not so interesting as the one in The Hague, so there he's actually admitting the house that he's staying in England isn't quite as good. He says, it is perhaps well that I am here. Later on, especially when the sale of pictures grows more important, I shall perhaps be of use. So he's not feeling very useful. He says, and then I cannot tell you how interesting it is to see London and English business and the way of life, which differs so much from ours. You must have had pleasant days at home. How I should like to see them all again. Give my compliments to everybody who inquires after me. And then he mentions a couple of people, and then he says, and now, boy, good luck to you. Write to me soon, Vincent. Then he asks, just out of idle curiosity, do you have my room at Roos's or the one you slept in last summer? Letter from Vincent van Gogh to London, and then I guess to the folks in the Netherlands. 20th November 1873, and this is quite a short letter. Dear Caroline, hearty congratulations on your birthday. No doubt it will be a festive day. This first birthday in your own home. I hope this will be a very good and happy year for you. I hope you receive my last letter. Please write soon. I'm longing to hear something again. So one wonders whether Van Gogh has got sort of feelings for Caroline. You know, I mean, you don't write a letter just to anybody on their birthday. So you might write to a family member, but how often would you just write to a girl? So him writing to her on her birthday, maybe that's a sign that he actually quite likes her. And of course, it's if something does develop, it's going to be a long distance relationship, right? Anyway, he says, have you seen Theo? I heard he arrived at The Hague last Wednesday, here with a small contribution to your scrapbook. All is well with me, but I'm up to my ears in work and have only a moment to spare. Greetings to all in the Poten. How I should like to look in on you today. And I'm sure he means that. He's got an exclamation mark there as well. You get the sense that he's lonely, that he's missing them and all that kind of thing. What I want to sort of emphasize here is at this time, Vincent's 20 years old and is experiencing real loneliness. 17 years later, he's also going to be lonely, but he's used to it by then. I'm not saying you ever completely used to being lonely, but there's a certain amount of familiarity you have with it. It's not this horrible, unbearable thing to get through. You know, you can sometimes find it sometimes quite pleasant and sometimes quite bearable, but certainly you get better at it over time. And you know, if I could have given him any advice, it would be get a dog, you know. And then he says, wishing you the best of luck, yours truly, Vincent. I really think he means it when he says, how I should like to look in on you today. I think he really means that. So it's just a short birthday card. Once again, you can see what a considerate guy he is. He doesn't just send her a letter. He actually sends some, I don't know what it is, but some contribution for her scrapbook. And he doesn't just say, happy birthday, take care, bye. He says, everything's well with me, but I'm busy. And you know, it's still quite a nicely executed letter for a short letter. The next letter is written quite a long time afterwards. There's no letter in December. So it's quite a jump from this. And it's not even from Vincent or to Vincent. It's actually from their sister Anna to Theo van Gogh. And it's written the 6th of January, 1874. So yeah, we're getting a indirect view of the Van Goghs from his sister to his brother. It's written on the 6th of January, 1874. And it's not a complete letter, it's just a portion of a letter that was found somewhere. So it just starts, Monday morning at breakfast, I found a letter from London, which contained a letter from Vincent and one from Ursula Lawyer. Both were very kind and amiable. She asked me to write her, and Vincent wished her very much we should be friends. I'll tell you what he writes about her. Then she quotes, Ursula Lawyer is a girl with whom I have agreed that we should consider ourselves each other's brother and sister. You should consider her as a sister too and write to her. And I think you will then soon find out what kind of girl she is. I'll say nothing more than that. I have never heard or dreamed of anything like the love between her and her mother. Old girl, don't think there's more behind it than I wrote just now, but don't tell them at home. I must do that myself. But again, love her for my sake. So this is really pretty weird. So kind of what's going on here is Van Gogh seems like he's developed feelings over December, over Christmas, for a girl, and he actually wants his sister to come and stay with him to sort of, I guess, broker a relationship so that his sister can kind of hang out with this girl that he likes and kind of introduce her to him. That's sort of what I gather. I don't know if it's introduce him, but just to sort of facilitate them hanging out together kind of thing. So kind of right out of the blue, do you want me to read that again? He says, you should consider her as a sister and write to her. And I think you will soon find out what kind of girl she is. So Van Gogh really fancies her. And then he says, I'll say nothing more than that. I never heard or dreamed of anything like the love between her and her mother. So she's just saying she loves her mother. And then she also addresses his sister and says, old girl, don't think there's more behind it than I wrote just now, but don't tell them at home. So he's kind of saying, don't get suspicious. But why would he say that if there wasn't a reason for suspicion? And then he also says, don't tell them at home. Don't tell our parents. So you kind of get the feeling that Vincent's feelings towards the opposite sex already have a bum rap, don't you? So it's already a bit iffy. And I love the way he sort of says, love her for my sake. He's saying to his sister, love this girl for my sake, So I don't know. It seems like he's really trying very hard, doesn't it? Anyway, he says, I suppose there will be a love between those two as between Agnes and David Copperfield. Got no idea what he means by that. Then he says, although I must say that I believe there's more than a brother's love between them. I'm not sure what that refers to either. Oh, hang on. So that's what his sister's saying. Vincent's sister is saying, I suppose there will be a love between those two as between Agnes and David Copperfield. Although I must say I believe there's more than a brother's love between them. I send you here Ursula's letter, and so you can judge for yourself. I hope you'll send it back very soon with a long epistle of yourself. So this letter was written in English, except for the sentences where Anna quotes Vincent, which are in Dutch. The name of the young woman Vincent fell in love with was actually Eugenie. Ursula was the name of her mother. So this is actually Vincent van Gogh falling in love at 20 years old. And good for him, right? And he's trying to sort of get the love going. He's trying to get it going by involving his sister. He wants his sister to come over. And anyway, so what's also interesting is we don't really get a letter from Vincent where it's kind of in the public, like he doesn't write to his brother and say, unless it's in this letter, saying, Theo, I'm in love, it's awesome. Or from Theo to him saying, hey, I met a girl, they seem to talk business and they keep it sort of not strictly business, but they don't seem to go into that area. Or maybe I'm wrong. So this is written from London in January 1874. Let's see what he says about this girl. My dear Theo, many thanks for your letter. My warm good wishes for a very happy new year. I know you are doing well at The Hague because Mr. Tierstick told me so. I can see from your letter that you are taking a keen interest in art, and that's a good thing, old fellow. I'm glad you like Millet, Schreyer, Labinet, Frans Hals, etc. For as Morv says, that's it. That painting by Millet, that's it. Indeed, that's magnificent. That's poetry. How I wish I could have another talk with you about art, but we'll just have to keep writing to each other about it. Admire as much as you can. Most people don't admire enough. And he's got those words kind of emphasized. I think he's underlined them. Admire is underlined as much as you can. Most people don't admire enough. Don't admire enough is also kind of emphasized. Then he goes through, the names of a few of the painters I particularly like, and it's like a really long list. I'm not going to read them all. Millet, Bouton, Antigna, Jalabert, Ziem, Bonington, Diaz, Rousseau, Wahlberg, Bernier, Breton, and so on. Cook, Schalfhout, Wissenbruch, and last but not least, Maris and Mauve. Anyway, it's just lots of artists. But I could carry on like that for I don't know how long, and then there are still all the old masters, and I'm sure I've forgotten some of the best of the modern ones. So it's still, the love of art is still very much in his blood, and yet something is happening. There is a change that is taking place. He says, do go on doing a lot of walking and keep up your love of nature, for that is the right way to understand art better and better. Let me repeat that. He says, do go on doing a lot of walking and keep up your love of nature, for that is the right way to understand art better and better. I think that is a awesome Vincent van Gogh quote, and here he's only 20 years old. One of the great ways to understand art is to walk in nature. He says, painters understand nature and love her and teach us to see, and that's also emphasized. So what he's really saying is that nature is the way to great art, to great creativity. Nature is the way to learn how to see the world. And there are quite a few examples where engineering was based on people looking at nature, like the jackhammer was based on some kind of insect that does the same thing, and so on and so on. There are so many examples. He goes on to say, and then there are painters who never do anything that is no good, who cannot do anything bad, just as there are ordinary people who can do nothing but good. And I think that is quite a big statement he's making there. He's saying there are some painters who just can't execute an ugly painting. They kind of have the Midas touch, right? And then he says, in the same, when I was really linking this concept that he loves so much of great art to ordinary people who can do nothing but good. And I get the feeling that has started to sow a seed in his heart. This idea that another way to do what needs to be done is by being an ordinary person like a hobbit that just does good. And that's good enough, that's a good enough thing to do in the world to make a difference. Then he says, I'm getting on very well here. I've got a delightful home and I'm finding it very pleasurable taking a look at London and the English way of life and the English people themselves. And I've gotten nature and art and poetry. And if that isn't enough, what is? So you're kind of getting a sense here that something has happened that is good, that is making him feel pretty effusive, right? A delightful home, and it's very pleasurable. And he says, I like the English way of life and the English people themselves, right? And then he says, I haven't forgotten Holland, and especially not The Hague and Brabant. We are busy at the office doing stock taking, but it will be over in 5 days. We got off more lightly than you did in The Hague. I hope that, like me, you had a happy Christmas. And so, my boy, best wishes and write to me soon. He says something in French, and then he says, I hope you'll be able to make something of it. Goodbye. Regards to everybody at work and to anybody else who asks after me, especially everybody at Aunt Fee's and at the Hannebeeks, Vincent. And then he says, I'm enclosing a few lines for Mr. Roos. And so he's adding kind of like a sub-letter to Mr. Roos. Very thoughtful young fellow, isn't he? But no mention at all about this girl that is met, right? His sister knows about it. He doesn't tell his brother, although his sister has told, I think, his brother. February 1874, letter from Vincent van Gogh to Caroline van Stockham. My dear Caroline, I feel the urge to write you a few words. How nice were the days when we were together. Rest assured that I never forget you, but I'm not such a good hand at letter writing as I should like to be. I live a rich life here, having nothing yet possessing all. That's also something that to him is important. Having nothing yet possessing all. It reminds me of what somebody told me when I was a photojournalist, where they said, what did they say? Underpaid, but overprivileged or something like that. I remember someone telling me while I was a photojournalist, you sort of went on you stayed in some of the most luxurious hotels, went on ultra luxurious trains like the Blue Train, experienced certain incredible events, VIP events, but you weren't really paid very much. You sort of got this real access to the high life, and someone just described it very well. I think they said underpaid but overprivileged or something like that. I'm not quite sure if that was the second part is right. Just that you weren't paid a lot, but you got this real amazing experience that not too many people got. And he's capturing that by saying, having nothing yet possessing all. He says, at times I'm inclined to believe that I'm gradually turning into a cosmopolite. That is neither a Dutchman nor an Englishman nor yet a Frenchman, but simply a man. So yeah, this is quite existential in a way. It's quite philosophical. Imagine saying those words. I'm gradually turning into a cosmopolite. That is neither a Dutchman nor an Englishman nor yet a Frenchman, but simply a man. And then he goes on to say, and as a homeland, the whole world. So he's saying his homeland is the whole world. Now, as I say, you can imagine how that philosophy, while idealistic, can lead to poverty. I also traveled all over the place, lived all over the place, and that rootless existence means it's very hard to develop consistency and also consistent work ethic. I'm not saying you don't have a work ethic, I'm just saying when you break that pattern over and over again, you also break, to some extent, work relationships and patterns, and it's quite difficult to get momentum when you keep shifting around, with this itinerant lifestyle. Robbie Robbins says Gabby and Brian. Yeah, and Gabby and Brian seem to be quite interested in Van Gogh as well. You have some traces of that in the van as well. Then he says, we have not got there yet, though I'm straining after it and perhaps may grasp it. And as my ideal, what Moe called, that is it. Old girl, adieu. Yours truly, Vincent. A handshake for you and Willem like old times till your fingers hurt. I must say this is a very short but very beautiful, powerful, a very compelling little message on the 9th of February 1874. Then about 2 weeks later, I guess, Vincent writes to Theo, 20th February 1874. We're approaching almost halfway. That is his time in London. He says, "Dear Theo, thanks for your letter. I don't want the book just now. Take your time and send it back when you've finished it. I have not read the book by Van Vleuten, but I should like to see it. I've read another book on art by Van Vleuten and did not quite agree with him, though it was very learned. Berger is simple and whatever he says is true." So he's got quite a strong opinion. He's not sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and gullible. He's already quite a educated and thus opinionated fellow. He says, "I am glad you have been in Amsterdam. When you see him, will you thank Uncle Cor for the pamphlet he sent me? I am glad you feel so comfortable at Roos's. As I already let you know through Anna Carbentus, you are quite right about those priggish girls. I also agree with you about Bertha Honebeck, but watch your heart, boy." So for the first time, as far as I can see, this is where there's a little bit of talk between brothers about girls, and doesn't seem to be completely positive. He says, "You are quite right about those priggish girls," which makes one wonder, is he experiencing Eugenie in England to be priggish? One wonders. He says, "Watch your heart, boy." What do you think if he's saying that? Do you think it's because things are going well or not? Then he says, "Have you seen Mr. Jacobson's collection yet? He will certainly ask you to come and see it, and it is well worth while. Give him my respects and tell him I'm doing quite well here and that I see many beautiful things. I'm all right and am very busy. Thank Willem for his letter, blah, blah, blah. Best regards, Vincent." 3rd March 1874. this is to his friends. Dear Caroline and Willem, hearty congratulations. So at this point, it's almost every second letter is to Caroline or to his other friends. Now, compare that to the letters that he writes from Orvez, only to his brother and back, to his brother and back, to his brother and back. These are to other people and including members of the opposite sex. So he says, Dear Caroline and Willem, hearty congratulations. I'm afraid you're disappointed at not hearing from me sooner, but that's how I am. And you know that I mean well. But now you must return good for evil and let me know at once how you are. Now I have something new to tell you. Perhaps our Anna will come here. You can well imagine how wonderful this would be for me. It is almost too good to be true. Well, we'll have to wait and see. If she comes, it will probably be in May, and perhaps it might be arranged for me to go and bring her back. I'm longing to be closer to her than I am now. We have hardly seen each other once these last few years, and we only half know each other. The best of luck to you. Greetings to all in the Poten and to anyone who asks after me. Yours truly, Vincent. So what he kind of says there, basically this letter is to say that he's really looking forward to seeing his sister. And maybe he's hoping that they're going to pass this on to his sister, maybe. Quite a brief letter. Now, 30th of March, 1874, Vincent to Theo. Dear Theo, I've received your gift, included in a letter to me, of a guilder intended for the purchase of a pair of cufflinks. I thank you very cordially, old man, but you should not have. I have more money than necessary. So I think this is for his 21st birthday. So his brother sends him some money and he's going to buy cufflinks with that money. And he says, I have more money than necessary. Now, you might think that he's doing well, that he's successful, that he's rich or something like that. But if you know Van Gogh, then you actually know that he probably doesn't have a lot of money, but for his standards, it's a lot. For his, not standards, for his purposes, it's a lot of money. He doesn't really want a lot of money. Anyway, he says thanks, and as time goes by, he's going to want less money and less money. It's actually going to become a problem. Anyway, he says, thank you for the letter which I received this morning. I was very glad that Marv is engaged to Jet Carbentus. That is fine. I was pleased to hear that you're doing so well. So some of their friends are getting engaged, right? You have done well to read the book by Berger. You should devour books on art as much as possible, especially the Gazette de Beaux Arts, etc. By all means, try to get a good knowledge of pictures. That picture by Apel we have here now is good, but last year he painted the same subject, and I thought it was better and brighter than this one. I'm glad that you go to see Uncle Cor now and then. He has pictures and prints which you can never see at the house in The Hague. I too am very busy just now and am glad of it, for that is what I want. Adieu, boy, keep in good spirits. I wish you well. Greetings to Itterson, Vincent. And now quite a big jump. That letter was written 30th of March. The next letter is written like a month later, 30th of April. Dear Theo, many happy returns on your birthday. Do well and don't look back, then all will come right. I was glad to receive your last letter. A few days ago, I sent you a photograph, Young Girl with a Sword by Jacquet, as I thought you would like to have it. The picture by Van Gogh is not very dirty. Not quite sure what that means. I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm glad you visit the Hanebeeks often. When I return to Holland, I will stop for some days in The Hague, because for me, The Hague is like a second home to me. Then it says in brackets, I will stay at your place. So you can tell that he is still missing home. He's obviously had a great time at The Hague, and The Hague is Den Haag. I actually stayed there when I was in the Netherlands in 2019. It's quite a nice spot. It's Amsterdam is big. The Hague is a smallish city, but a nice compact town. It's like a small Amsterdam. He says, I would have liked to accompany you on this walk to the Vink. I seize every opportunity to make a tour of the area, but for the moment I am very busy. It is very beautiful here, although it is in the city. Lilac, hawthorns, and laburnums flower in all gardens. The chestnut trees are splendid. He that sincerely loves nature finds pleasure everywhere. So this spirit of loving nature, wanting to be in nature, is something that Van Gogh carried with him through his whole life, right up to the end of his life. He that sincerely loves nature finds pleasure everywhere. I must say, I also find that true in my life. Nevertheless, I miss Holland, especially Halford. I am very busy gardening now. I've sown scented peas, poppies, and daisies. I have nothing more to do than wait to see what they will give. I have to tell you, I'm happy every morning to have to walk the distance between my accommodation and the shop, and in the evening, that between the shop and my accommodation is a good 3/4 of an hour walk each time. So every day is walking kind of an hour and a half, 90 minutes. And that probably also sets the stage for him enjoying walks, walking somewhere and painting. Um, he's definitely quite unique in that respect, that he's a very outdoorsy artist, a very quite a fit guy who walks long distances to get the pictures that he wants. And it's possible that his fitness is the reason why he was, to some extent, more physically healthy than his brother was, because he was outside, because he was walking, because he was essentially hiking. Then he says, it is a fine thing that business finishes so early. The office closes at 6 o'clock, and yet there's no less work done. My compliments to all the friends. And then he mentions a couple, and he says, best wishes, Vincent. Then he says, postscript, the apple trees have blossomed beautifully. I think everything is earlier here than in Holland. As soon as I know anything more definite about my going home, I shall write at once. I'm afraid, however, that I shall not be able to go for at least 4 weeks. Write soon. So he's starting to plan going home. He's recently turned 21. He's been away from home already for about a year. And so that is sort of what is going on at this point. So this is quite interesting. It's a letter from the Van Gogh family, authored mainly by Anna, to Theo, right? And one's got to wonder, where are the letters from the family to Vincent? Well, maybe they wrote them and he just didn't bother to keep them. Anyway, 24th of February, 1874. So things are developing with Eugenie in London, between Eugenie and Vincent. So she writes, I also got a very kind letter from Eugenie. She seems to be a natural and amiable girl. Vincent wrote that she was engaged with a good-natured youth who would know how to appreciate her. Okay, so this could be Vincent's first heartbreak, right? So he obviously really liked this girl, and turns out now she's engaged. With a good-natured youth who would know how to appreciate her. We too are just like old people who try to know all about persons who are in love, but I'm very glad for Vincent that he found such a kind family to live with. You know yourself how agreeable it is. He seems to be always in good spirits. Think about that, those words, he seems to be always in good spirits. I don't know whether it's true. It could be true. It could also be that when he's young, that he kind of paints a silver lining on everything. He's not going to write letters complaining, because he also wants to get letters. But you get this sense that he is got a smile on his face, even though things are quite tough, even though things aren't ideal, even though he's to some extent quite lonely. He's sort of trying to make the most of it, right? And think about those words and Van Gogh. He seems to always be in good spirits. And this idea that Van Gogh committed suicide, this idea that he was troubled, this idea that he was miserable. I do think even when things weren't going well, even when he was in an asylum, he was, I wouldn't say in good spirit, but but he was trying to overcome his situation, and it seems like he did, right? Then he writes, in the last letter he writes to me, meaning Vincent wrote to Anna, I fear that, wow. Sorry, my voice seems like it's reaching the end. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go much longer. Not sure what's going on there. Let me try and slow things down a little. So in the last letter, Vincent writes to Anna, quote, I fear that after all the sunshine I enjoy from there could be very soon rain, but I will only enjoy as long as possible the sunshine and have my umbrella in the neighborhood for the rain that could come. Now, I don't know whether that is literal or figurative. Not quite sure what is meant there. Or I fear that after all the sunshine I enjoy from there could be very soon rain. Do you think he's speaking symbolically there or talking about the weather? Then there's another letter, 15th August 1874, so quite a big jump, from Theo and Vincent's father to Theo, right? So it's from Papa van Gogh to Theo. They, meaning Vincent and Anna, have moved and live no more in Famille, but have rented rooms. Their address is Ivy Cottage, 395 Kennington, New Road, London. At the lawyers, it appears not to be too satisfactory. I am glad I did not trust it any too well. So it turns out that Anna does go to join her brother in London, and they're staying in a place called Ivy Cottage. He goes on to say, yesterday afternoon there was a letter from Vincent and Anna. Anna found a job at a school, a day school, in a small but very nice village some 5 hours from London. Salary £12 a year, so that is not much yet. She's free at 4 in the afternoon and lives with a lady, a little shy person, she writes. Mama van Gogh writes the following. How strange it will be for them when they part company. On the 24th of August, Anna must start her job. May she have the courage and strength to go on with it. So what is happening here is Anna joins Vincent. Alas, Eugenie gets engaged to someone anyway. Anna then sort of leaves Vincent to go and work somewhere else. Then there's another letter from Mama van Gogh to Theo, dated 28th October 1874. Don't you think it is very sad that Vincent does not write to us during such important days? Oh, Theo, you don't know how it distresses us and how we long to go to him and say, boy, how is it? Isn't it true we can't live without each other and love each other too dearly, to be estranged from each other and not open our hearts? So it seems like Vincent has kind of stopped writing. Either he's too busy, and bear in mind how much he was writing and how thoughtful those letters were. And in the meantime, what's happened is his sisters come to him the way that he wanted and now left him. And so the fact that he's not writing shows what? Then she says, he thought that father had brought about his transfer, which in itself he was pleased with, he wrote in his last unfriendly note. So Vincent's mother is saying, well, we got an unfriendly letter from Van Gogh, from our son, and what is brought up in the letter is that how and why was I transferred to London, right? We later heard from Anna that he had sent her a postcard asking for his suitcase. She was also longing to hear something from him. After that letter from Vincent, father assured him immediately that he had not spoken about Paris with uncle, but uncle with him. Uncle had said he wished the transfer for Vincent's sake. He wanted to give him a better insight into the business. especially in connection with the later enlargement of the London branch. So you kind of get the feeling here that Vincent's tried to make the most of being transferred, and now, like a year and a half later, he's actually almost accusing the people who transferred him. He was like, why am I here? Whose idea was this? Why did you think this would be a good thing, kind of thing? Batman says the letters could be worth as much as the art. Well, I think they are. I think the letters make the art worth a lot, and vice versa. So you can see things aren't going so well. And also, when things aren't going well with him, when he's not happy, he doesn't really write very much. He stops writing letters. Then, Theo, do not stop going to church. Very often you will hear words there about the things you have been thinking about, words that you need to bear happily, the difficulties you meet, or to be consoled in your sorrows. Now, you can imagine these words are the same words that Vincent's parents would say to him. Don't stop going to church. Bear in mind his father's a pastor. Words you need to hear, words that you need to bear happily the difficulties you meet, or to be consoled in your sorrows. There is so much in life, and you will often come back from church with satisfaction and admit that, even if you don't think it necessary. It is useful to be reminded of those things in a world that is so full of distractions and worries. Well, this was October 1874, and she's talking about a world full of distractions and worries. Okay, so it seems like there's quite a long gap where Vincent was silent for quite a long time. This is a letter written 16th of June, 1874, from Vincent to his brother Theo. There's a note attached to this letter by Joe Bonga. Before going to Holland, Vincent declared his love for Ursula Lawyer, but heard that she was already engaged to be married, so he came home in a melancholy mood. That's what I thought. So it's actually not Ursula, it's Eugenie. So he did develop feelings for this person. You know, he's lodging with them, and it didn't really work out. And so he comes home and is not very happy. And some of that unhappiness spills over into his work, where he sort of feels, why am I here? Right? So it's kind of him being a bit too emotional, isn't it? You know, it's like, well, what's love got to do with it? You know, you're not happy in your work because you're not happy in your love life, kind of thing. But you need to keep the two apart. And although Vincent van Gogh's like a very conscientious worker, when he's emotional, I think he can get the opposite. He can become distracted and he can kind of be a problem employee when he's emotional. Anyway, he writes his brother, Dear Theo, thanks for your letter. I intend to leave here on Thursday, June 25th or Saturday, June 27th, if nothing interferes. I am longing so much for everybody and for Holland. I am also anxious to have a good talk with you about art. Think it over, and perhaps you will have some questions to put to me. We have many beautiful things, including a fine picture by Jacquet and beautiful Boldini. There are beautiful things in the Royal Academy this year. Tissot has 3 pictures here. Lately, I took up drawing again, but I did not amount to much. So here, at the age of 21, is a first glimpse that he's actually drawing. And he's actually mentions that I took up drawing again. So somewhere, not in his past, but I mean, because he's still quite young, but I guess in his backstory, he was drawing anyway, maybe as a kid, and now he's been drawing a little bit, but he says it didn't really amount to much. So he's actually, he drew and then he stopped. Then he says, I was glad to see from your letter that you often visit the Hanebeeks. Adieu, we shall meet soon. My compliments to all the friends. Ever your brother, Vincent. Letter from Vincent van Gogh to Theo. I think it's written from Halfort, so in the Netherlands, 10th July 1874. Dear Theo, thanks for the inquiry you made. We are now going to stay here another day and arrive in London on Wednesday morning. The photograph that I put in the catalogues of Forbes was for you, and I thought it would interest you. It represented the Scheldt in Belgium. It is of a picture by Cup. It is not so very beautiful, but it is at least original. I'll write soon from London. Best wishes from Vincent. So I think this is sort of Vincent writing to his brother on his way back to London. He's gone to the Netherlands and he's going back, right? Back to London. 21st of July, 1874, Vincent to Theo from London. Dear Theo, yesterday a box was sent to The Hague in which I enclosed a photograph of a picture by Jane Maris and also as promised something. I hope you will put them both up in your room. In the same box is a photograph of a picture by blah, blah, blah. And then I arrived safely in London, so he was obviously traveling with his sister back to visit family in the Netherlands, now both of them traveling back to England, and hope we shall find something for her here. I do not say it will be easy, but every day she is here, she learns something. And at all events, I think there's more chance for her to find something here than in Holland. It is a great pleasure for me to walk with her through the streets in the evening. I find everything again as beautiful as when I saw it the first time. Good luck to you, boy, and give my compliments to the Roosters, Hanebeeks, and Carbentuses when you see them. I'm learning to swim. Well, that's interesting. Well, it's a good time, July. It's a good time to learn to swim. Write to me whether you have already read In Michelu and what you think about it. Sorry, Michelet. To me, that book was a revelation. Adieu, Vincent. So he's talking about a book that really meant a lot to him, and the book's name is L'amour by Michelet, which means love, right? L'amour. When are we going to get to 1875? Letter from Vincent to Theo, London, 31st July, 1874. Dear Theo, I'm glad you've been reading Michelet and that you understand him so well. If that kind of book teaches us anything, it is that there is much more to love than people generally suppose. To me, that book has been both a revelation and a gospel. So, yeah, you're getting a sense from Van Gogh that reading is becoming a real inspiration. He's getting real inspiration from books. He calls one book in particular Revelation and a Gospel. And then he talks about, quite interesting, so this deals with women. It says, there are no old women. That does not mean there are no old women, only that a woman does not grow old as long as she loves and is loved. And then a chapter like The Aspirations of Autumn. So kind of what he's saying is, all women are, what's the word, kind of eligible, no matter what their age. And you would actually see that later on with Van Gogh that he so obviously he had feelings for Eugenie. It didn't work out. He was displaced by a more eligible chap. But as he kind of got older, he had more and more inappropriate relationships. And you kind of get the feeling that he did that because it's almost like when he read this book, it's like he opened the door to say, I don't only have to love a woman in this age group. It can be any age group kind of thing. And that kind of makes you wonder again about Marguerite Gachet. You know, would he have thought she's inappropriately young? Someone else may have thought that, but would he have thought that? I'm not sure if Van Gogh had relationships with women that were older than him, but I've got a feeling the one prostitute that he was in a relationship with was older than him, and she was also pregnant from another man. So I think that's quite interesting. But you can tell there's certainly a shift in his attitude to women taking place here based on his reading, and are his beliefs in general also shifting to some extent. what he's starting to realize is life is not really a box of chocolates. Things aren't turning into a fairy tale. Things are quite frustrating. Things are quite hard. And what is also quite interesting with the Van Goghs is at least three of them, they come from Holland, they come from the Netherlands, but they're going outside the country to get work, right? They're going to Belgium, to Brussels, to later Theo would go to France. His sister's gone to England. Vincent's gone to England. So you kind of get the feeling, is there a lot of work in the Netherlands, right? And Cor would later go to South Africa. So, if you think about it, four members of the Van Gogh family left the Netherlands in order just to work somewhere, right? He says a woman is a quite different being from a man, and a being that we do not yet know, or at best only superficially, as you put it. Yes, that I'm sure of. So the brothers are kind of having another conversation about the mystery that a woman is. It's a little bit like the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and is kind of just, giving vent to that bit through this other book. And he goes on to say, and that a man and a woman can become one, that is to say, one whole and not two halves. I believe that too. So this is obviously very much on his mind. Love and the opposite sex. That's definitely becoming a big deal. And I mean, why not? He's 21 years old, right? He says, Anna is bearing up well. We go on marvelous walks together. It is so beautiful here. If one just has a good and single eye without too many beams in it. And if one does have that eye, then it is beautiful everywhere. Father is far from well, although he and mother say that he's better. Yesterday we received a letter with all sorts of plans. Wouldn't we just try this and that, which will prove to be unworkable and certainly useless. And at the end, father said once again that he leaves it all to us, etc. Rather petty and disagreeable, Theo, and it reminded me so much of grandfather's letters, but what can you do? So this is the first sign of Vincent grumbling. If you think about it, it's almost like the first time ever in a letter you're actually getting him saying negative things. He talks about something that his father and mother are dealing with is petty and disagreeable. It's kind of the first time that he's actually ever said something that's overtly negative, right? And that's actually quite astonishing if you think about how many letters he's written. That he's actually quite a positive dude, right? He doesn't moan and complain. He's always talking about how beautiful everything is and how he's enjoying everything. Then he says, our beloved aunts are staying there now and are no doubt doing much good. Things are as they are, and what can a person do about it? Anna and I look at the newspaper faithfully every day and reply to whatever advertisements there are. On top of that, we have already registered with a governess agency, so we are doing what we can. More haste, less speed. So it seems like Vincent's looking for another job, and his sister as well. I think he's still working. I'm not sure, but what we do know for sure is that he's looking at advertisements. It looks like they are looking for new work, both of them, him and his sister. I'm glad that you go around to see the Honnebeek so often. Give them all my kindest regards and tell them some of my news. The painting by Thijs Maris that Mr. Teerstig has bought must be beautiful. I'd already heard about it and have myself bought and sold one quite similar. My interest in drawing has died down here in England, but maybe I'll be in the mood again someday or other. Well, those are definitely very interesting words. From Vincent van Gogh. Let me read them again. My interest in drawing has died down here in England, but maybe I'll be in the mood again someday or other. You think? Well, it turned out that he was. Right now, I'm doing a great deal of reading. On the 1st of January 1875, we shall probably be moving to another larger shop. So it does seem like he's still employed by Goupil, but maybe looking for something else. Unless he's looking for something else for his sister. But certainly him looking for, if that is the case, if he's looking for work for his sister, that might be something that it's like pushing him in that direction. Maybe you should be doing the same thing. Maybe you should also be considering a different job. Anyway, he says, Mr. Obach is in Paris at the moment deciding whether or not we should take that other firm over. Don't mention it to anybody for the time being. So there's a little bit of secrecy between Vincent and Theo. We need to, I'll tell you this, but between us, blah, blah, blah. Then he says, best wishes and write to us again soon. Anna is learning to appreciate paintings and has quite a good eye, admiring Bouton, Maurice, Jack, blah, blah, blah. Entre nous, I think we are going to have a different time finding something for her. They say everywhere that she's too young and they require German too. But be that as it may, she certainly has a better chance here than in Holland. Goodbye, Vincent. You can imagine how, as a postscript, you can imagine how delighted I am to be here with Anna. Tell HT that the pictures have duly arrived and that I shall be writing to him soon. So one thing that occurs to me is Anna visits Vincent in England and he seems like he's trying to help her find work. One wonders why Anna never visited Vincent in Orvez. Why not? What was it like inappropriate for a woman to be traveling by herself? But you get the sense that they were quite a good team, Anna and Vincent. They were doing things together. So what happened many, many years later? Letter from Vincent van Gogh to Theo, August 10th, 1874. This looks like it's going to be an interesting one. Okay, here we go. Are you guys ready? Dear Theo, ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. That's in inverted commas. Next one, he that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. I don't know why I said her, but anyway, that's also in inverted commas. So he says, so keep to your own ideas, and if you doubt whether they are right, test them with those of him who dare to say, I am the truth. Him is with a capital H, or with those of some very human person, Michelet, for instance. So he seems already yet to be, either he's been reading the Bible or he's been reading the Bible and Michelet, but anyway, this whole letter is pretty weird. He says, virginity of soul and impurity of body can go together. He talks about a book. Is there a purer being than that girl who loved so much? That's quite an interesting comment there. Virginity of soul and impurity of body can go together. Definitely quite an interesting comment. You can see what the thinking process is there. Then he says, I'm just going to skip through a little bit here. He says, with the money I gave you, you must buy Alphonse Carr's Voyage Auto de Monjardin. I'm not sure how to say that. Be sure to do that. I want you to read it. So here, Vincent's giving his brother money, right? He's giving his brother money to buy a book, I guess. And then I walk every evening. Autumn is coming fast, and that makes nature more serious and more intimate still. We are going to move to a house quite covered in ivy. I will soon write more from here. Compliments to anyone who may inquire after me. Vincent. And now we are into 1875. So it's quite a big jump from August to February. Dear Theo, I've quite filled your little book and I think it turned out well. When you have a chance, send me The Cliff by Jules Breton. Our gallery is ready now and is very beautiful. We have some splendid pictures, and he mentions a bunch of artists, including Dubigny, Israel's, and so on. In April, we are going to have an exhibition. Mr. Boussard has promised to send us the best things available. Malaria by Hebert and others. How I should like to have you here. We must arrange that someday. How I should love to show you my room. There's a beautiful exhibition of old art here, including, so again, just a lot of discussion on art. It talks about landscapes, autumn evening, portraits, and so on. Adieu. I shall send you your little book at the first opportunity. Write soon, Vincent. And then I think he also included a little notebook in which he copied poems he liked best to Theo. Oh, hang on. Theo sent him a little book, and then Vincent copied. Oh, so it is poems for Theo that he liked the best. Okay. Quite a short letter, that one. Now we go to March 1875 from London. Dear Theo, wow, we're approaching a 2-hour mark. I don't think I'm going to go beyond that, but I want to get through this London period. Dear Theo, bravo, Theo. Your appreciation of that girl in Adam Bede is very good. That landscape in which the fallow sandy path runs over the hill to the village with its clay or whitewashed cottages, with moss-grown roofs and here and there black thorn bush on either side of the brown heath and a gloomy sky over it, with a narrow white streak at the horizon. It is out of Michel. Now, what's amazing about that first paragraph is it feels a bit like the descriptions he used when he was in Norvège, just describing what he was seeing around him. What's also interesting is he talks about Theo appreciating a girl. So there's that interest as well. He says, but there is still purer and nobler sentiment in it than in Michel. Today I enclose in the box we send the little book containing poetry I spoke of. And some other things he talks about. I do not think you have any immediate chance of being transferred to the house in London. So I don't know whether Theo's worried he's going to be transferred or wants to be transferred. But anyway, he's just saying, I don't think that's on the cards. He says, don't regret that your life is too easy. Mine is rather easy too. I think that life is pretty long and that the time will arrive soon enough in which another shall gird thee and carry thee where thou wouldst not. Also quite portentous, it's like things aren't going to be going so great forever. Then he says, adieu, remember me to all the friends, with a firm handshake, Vincent. These letters are fairly short compared to some of them. April 1875, 6th of April, London, 25 Bedford Street, Strand 6. Dear Theo, thanks for your letter. I copied in your little book, Calm Sea by Heine, didn't I? Some time ago, I saw a picture by Thijs Maris that reminded me of it. It represents an old Dutch town with rows of brownish red houses with stepped gables and high stoops, grey roofs, and white or yellow doors, window frames and cornices. There are canals with ships and a large white drawbridge under which a barge with a man at the tiller passes the little house of the bridge keeper, who is seen through the window, sitting alone in his little office. Further on is a stone bridge across the canal, over which some people and a cart with white horses are passing. You can tell that Van Gogh's thought process is filled with images. He's constantly seeing, on the one hand, pictures, scenes, scenarios, and on the other hand, he's reading passages, narratives, circumstances, and maybe in a way they're washing into one another, but it's nevertheless to some extent a fantasy experience. So what he's preoccupied with are pictures of somewhere else or something else, and stories of the same thing, right? And it's curious that, when he went out to paint, he would transform the world in front of him. So although he was there, it was transformed. And it is quite interesting, this need to describe and to be expressive of the things he's seeing. It's almost like the expressiveness of artists is starting to rub off on him. In other words, seeing art all the time means you're seeing something that the artist is trying to convey, and that's starting to rub off on you, where you sort of feel like, I also want to do that. I've also got something to say. And I must say, I've experienced that. Sometimes you watch an incredible movie or you read a fantastic book, and the first thing you want to do is evoke the same kind of feeling. You want to repeat the same thing, but with your spin on it, if that makes sense. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling. In fact, when I went to a barbecue a few days ago, this guy had all these swords and shields and statues of armor. And I told him about my passion for the movie Highlander, which came out in the 80s. And he told me it's a movie that he's watched over and over and over and over again. And so we actually shared this weird thing of we'd both been inspired by the same thing, and we had the same appreciation of certain movies and things. Not all of it was exactly the same, but a lot of it was. And I know certainly in my case, I mean, I wrote this book that's here, Bloodline Murmurs of Earth. I wrote this book really when I was in high school, and then I wrote the story, and then about 20 years later, I sort of resurrected the plot, and I was obviously a better writer in my 40s than I was in my 20s or my teens even. But the fact is that Highlander inspired the gist of the story I was trying to tell. And it feels like this is happening to Van Gogh, but over and over and over again, because his entire day is just art, 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 books and art, books and art, books and art. And so that's got to manifest in some way, and it does. It does manifest in some way. Zenaida, thanks a lot for that. I appreciate it. It's not fun getting through a whole live without a single super chat, but I appreciate that. Not that anyone has to, but nevertheless. I'm only going to carry on another about 10 minutes, but let's try and get through this letter. He says, and there is life everywhere, a porter with his wheelbarrow, a man leaning against the railing of the bridge and looking into the water, women in black with white bonnets. In the foreground is a brick paving quay with a black rail. In the distance, a church spire rises above the houses, a greyish white. So essentially, this entire letter is really describing scenes. In other words, it is Vincent writing in a way that is like painting. I've always been complimented, even when I was writing true crime books, people said, well, you paint with words. And I always found that a tremendous compliment, because I felt like there was a time where I felt like I was an artist. Me and my brother were drawing a lot, like drawing huge amounts. And he was always better than I was. And I always felt like I couldn't say everything I wanted to say by drawing a tree or drawing a mountain or drawing a house. I couldn't say what I wanted to say. And so I started doing more, you might want to call it modern art or whatever, but it was no longer a tree, it was shapes and colors. But I nevertheless still felt like I can't say what I want to say. There's so much I want to say. And then I found with writing I could do that. And so when people said, "Well, you paint with words," I thought, well, that is what I'm doing, I guess, and that is what I want to do. And that's what he's doing here in this letter. He says, I'll just read this part again. In the foreground is a brick paved quay with a black rail. In the distance, a church spire rises above the houses. A greyish white sky is above. It is a small picture, and the artist was looking down on the scene. The subject is almost the same as that of the big J. Maris Amsterdam, which you probably know. But this is talent and the other genius. Let's see if I can find it for you. It's sometimes nice to hear a scene or a picture described, but it's sometimes also nice to, if a picture says 1,000 words, sometimes it's nice just to see the picture. I see there are quite a few here. I'm not sure if I'm terribly fond of it, but let me share it with you. This isn't the painting that he's talking about, but it's a painting by that artist. So you can have a look at that link. Let me see if I can find one that I quite like. So I think one thing that this conveys is the different time that this is taking place in. So both the fact that you can't see what's going on and that you sort of can gives you a sense of time travel in a way. Look at this picture. I still can't find the one that he's referring to. Robbie Robin, thanks a lot. I hope I didn't guilt you into that. But I appreciate that. J. Maris Amsterdam, I wish I could find it. If any of you, I think this is it. Yeah, I think the one that I put there may actually be it. Oh no, it's that one. Is it this one? No, it's not. I can't find the color version of this one. I'm not sure if one of you guys can. So this seems to be the actual painting, but it's it seems to be in black and white. And I don't know where the color version is of this. Thanks, Robbie Robin. Thanks a lot. Yvonne says, I just paid my annual membership to Patreon today. We'll super chat next time. Yvonne, thank you. Okay. So Van Gogh is calling this talent and genius. He says, I've copied a few more things for which I will send when I have a chance. Don't forget, blah, blah, blah. My love to father, if you see him, Vincent. At this point, Vincent's 22 years old. This is 15 years ahead of the end in Auvers-sur-Oise. So this is the 6th of April, 1875. Now we are sometime later in April 1875. And interestingly, in this letter, there's actually a sketch by Vincent. So even 15 years earlier, Vincent was putting sketches into his letters. So I'm going to put a link to this. Yeah, you can kind of see. I want to put a link to this in the chat. This is the sketch that he does. I hope it comes out. Batman, that's really kind of you. Batman has kind of put up a chat on Yvonne's behalf. That's you've now really started something. Okay, so I really want to see if I can try and get through the London period. Let's see if I can do 2 more letters. Dear Theo, enclosed is a little drawing. I made it last Sunday, the morning when my landlady's little daughter died. A shame. She was 13 years old. It is a view of, so what that shows is when someone has died, he draws, right? He says, I made it last Sunday, the morning when my landlady's little daughter died. So obviously in that place of contemplation and seriousness and soberness, he draws. He says, it's a view of Streatham Common, a large grassy plain with oak trees and gorse. It had been raining overnight. The ground was soaked and the young spring grass was fresh and green. As you see, it is sketched on the title page of Poems by Edmund Roche. There are some very fine ones among them, grave and sad. One begins and ends thus. And it's written in French, but it translates as follows. Now, bear in mind, is writing this in the context of this little girl that has died, that is quite close to him, right? And he writes, I have, sad and alone, climbed the sad and barren dune, where the sea moans its constant lament, the dune where the waves die in large folds, monotonous path of tortuous folds. So he's obviously emotional. He's obviously sad, and he's expressing that through a drawing and a poem, right? And I think what's also important to convey here is here he is sad and he communicates sadness. And that's why I've said, in terms of this book by Martin Bailey, I've said, if he was suicidal, why does he not say, I'm so unhappy, I'm so sad, I'm so depressed? Because he would communicate his feelings constantly. So if he's feeling these keen suicidal feelings, why didn't he communicate that? That's really just my point. And so here, this poem really encapsulates the sadness of this little girl dying, and the picture as well, the rain soaking into the ground and so on, and the way the trees are after the rain. Let me read it again. He says, I have, sad and alone, climbed the sad and barren dune, where the sea moans its constant lament, the dune where the waves die in large folds, monotonous path of tortuous folds. Then there's another one. How I love to see you again, my native town, dear sea nymph sitting on the seashore. I love the shaft darting from your belfry, beautiful in its valor and beautiful in its elegance, its lace work capula, through which one sees the sky. You will probably be curious to know the one that describes the etching. And then there's another one. We looked at the pond with its somber leaden water as it assembled in the breeze fold after fold. If you desire it, are you not the master who created it after the creator? Kindest regards and good luck to you. Adieu. So one wonders to what extent this death of this little girl had an impact on him. 8th of May, 1875, Dear Theo, just a long letter, not very long. Thanks for your last letter. How is the patient? The patient refers to their cousin Annette Hanebeek, who died soon after. So, wow, looks like there's death in death is going around. He said, I had already heard from Father that she was ill, but I did not know it was as bad as that. Please write me soon about her. Hey boy, what shall we say? CM and Mr. Tierstig have been here and left again last Saturday. In my opinion, they went too often to see the Crystal Palace and other places where they had nothing particular to do. I think they might just as well have come to see the places where I live. I hope and trust that I'm not what many people think I am just now. It's quite an interesting comment, that I hope and trust that I'm not what many people think I am just now. We shall see. Some time must pass. Probably they will say the same of you a few years hence, at least if you remain what you are, my brother in both senses of the word. Farewell, and my compliments to the patient. With a handshake, Vincent. Then he writes the following postscript. To act well in this world, one must sacrifice all personal desires. The people who become the missionary of a religious thought have no other fatherland than this thought. Man is not on this earth merely to be happy or even to be simply honest. He is there to realize great things for humanity, to attain nobility, and to surmount the vulgarity of almost everybody. And I think this is a quote from someone called Renan. It's quite powerful stuff. And I must say, in a way, it sort of resonates with me, because there is that sense of vulgarity. There's a bit of a sense of that on YouTube as well, especially with the Johnny Depp case taking place. Can one surmount the vulgarity or not? Okay, so this is from Paris, and this is the last letter I'm going to read. Letter from Vincent van Gogh to Theo, Paris, 31st May 1875. So I'm not quite sure what the situation is here. I'm not sure if he's quit his job yet, but he's certainly writing this letter from Paris. But the point is, can you see what he's reading? Can you see the art that is affecting him? Can you see the circumstances that are touching his life? And all of these are having an influence on what he's doing, what he's going to do. Dear Theo, thanks for the letter I received this morning. Yesterday I saw the Caro exhibition. In it was the picture, The Garden of Olives. I'm glad he painted that. To the right, a group of olive trees, dark against the glimmering blue sky. In the background, hills covered with shrubs and a few large ivy-grown trees over which the evening star shines. Just think about this. One brother writing to another brother describing a painting, but describing it in such a realistic way. A group of olive trees, dark against the glimmering blue sky. In the background, hills covered with shrubs and a few large ivy-grown trees over which the evening star shines. You know, he's seen the picture. His brother perhaps hasn't. And so he's describing what's in the picture in a way that describes, in a way, reality, is descriptive of reality. He goes on to say, at the salon there are 3 very fine carreaux, the best of them painted shortly before his death. Female woodcutters will probably be reproduced as a woodcut in a certain magazine, I think. Let's see if I can share it with you. Is it this one? Either this one or this one. I think it's this one. Nisi, I saw something about pure guilt. I'll look at that in a second. I hope you're not feeling guilt. I think this is the picture he's talking about, but let me see if I can find the one with the background. I must say the description to me is almost better than the actual artwork, which is interesting. Wow, guys, you're making me blush. Thanks a lot. Nisi says pure guilt, haha. Had it planned the entire time. Okay. Priceless way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Thank you for sharing your talents and gifts with us. Love to Timmy, footprint Nisi. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Timmy's sitting, lying against I've got slippers on my feet. He's actually lying under the table. So that's where he is, but I'll give him a little nudge to say that's like from you. Madeline Jimenez, thanks you as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so Batman says, told you, the A+ team. Okay, so I'm going to just finish with this letter, and then that's at least we've gotten through the London period, which is quite a few. It was like 25 letters minus 3, it was quite a few. I think you'll agree with me, though, that although there's certain areas where he describes certain things and he describes some things, like he likes this painting, whatever, but there's certain moments that really stand out, that this is a really deep human being, that this is a really... Sharon Lynn, thanks a lot, from Canada. Yippee. There's a real sense that this is a deep person that is experiencing things deeply, and that he doesn't just want to exist, he wants to matter. He wants to be not a Dutch person or whatever. He wants to be a man belonging to the human race. He wants his humanity to touch humanity, and it did. He also, what's the other thing I was going to say? Okay, yeah. Well, my battery power seems to be fading. It's amazing that my voice actually managed to survive despite that thing earlier. So anyway, what was the other thing? He talked about being a man. The other, surmounting the vulgarity. And it does feel like he did that. You could even talk about if he had syphilis, he surmounted that. If he was going mad, or he was struggling with loneliness or struggling with failure, he was surmounting the vulgarity of his own life. He was surmounting the vulgarity of, in terms of the people who just didn't know what he was doing. He didn't really care, just kept doing what he was doing. And he somehow did key into the astonishing magic of life and of nature. That was what he focused his attention on. And Starry Night is, in a way, the poetry that is the triumph of surmounting vulgarity. Wouldn't you say that? Starry Night, that picture, is something that pushes all that vulgarity to the side and says life is magical, life is beautiful. Anyway, he goes on to say, some time ago I saw Jules Breton with his wife and 2 daughters. His figure reminded me of Jane Maris, but he had dark hair. As soon as there is an opportunity, I will send you a book of his, Les Champs et la Mer, which contains all his poems. He has a beautiful picture at the Salon St. John's Eve. Peasant girls dancing on a summer evening around St. John's fire. In the background, the village with a church and the moon over it. And then he says something in French. Then he says, there are now 3 pictures of his at the Luxembourg, and they are a procession among the cornfields, woman gleaning, and alone. Adieu, Vincent. Quite a strange letter from Vincent from Paris. Basically, all of it is just like describing and expressing what was inspiring. Let's see if I can, a procession among the cornfields. Let's see if I can find that artwork, just as the last thing that I do. A procession among the cornfields. Is that by J. Maris? Let's see if I can find that. It's too general, I think. Is this it? Van der Martin. Yeah, I can't really find it. It's a bit too general. Is there another one here? Woman gleaning. Let's see if I'm going to be able to find it. Okay, I'm not going to take it further than that. So we ended with the first letter from Paris, 31st of May, 1875. It's going into the summer of 1875. And we'll pick up the narrative from the Paris section, which, is very long. There are a lot of letters from Paris, about 30, 35. So that seems like another phase in his life, right? Definitely seems like another phase in his life. Okay, so where are we? Sharon Lynn's still in the house. Stephanie's obviously at Crime Con. I think she attended the John Ramsey thing, and I'm not quite sure what else. But that is something I want to talk a little bit about in a video, just what he said there. Did you guys notice that there was nothing... there was sort of nothing that happened on the 25th anniversary. Like there were no documentaries. It sort of just slid by. Nothing really happened. Susan Becker, change the subject. You took a photograph last week of something large, wrapped, unusual shape. Might have missed you opening it. What was it? I can give you the answer. I'll see if I can find you the answer. Just give me a second. Here it is. Let me add Susan Becker it so that I can make sure you see it. I'd rather show it to you, Susan, than tell you what it is. Paddy says, yes, Sharon, would love to have a tour with Nick of Van Gogh's haunts. Maybe we can do that sometime. Corporal Deb, can't wait for that. Sharon then says, Susan Becker, thanks so much for your support. Corporal Deb, which book are you reading from? I'm reading from a site called Web Exhibits, but there's another one as well. Terry Dean was only able to listen in periodically today, still thoroughly enjoyed. Sending love to you all. Thanks a lot, Terry Dean. I saw your message, Terry, saying, oh, I hope this was an announcement for a live or something. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but I did see your message. Okay, thanks, guys. I see we made it all the way to almost 2 hours, 20 minutes. Must I enjoy these meetings? Let me just, as a final question, just ask you guys, yeah, Judge Lama did step down. Then maybe he wasn't the right judge to be taking that case. Let me just ask you guys, how many of you would prefer this to be every Sunday and say Wednesday? Because I mean, the Morphew case is not, I'm not covering that because it's, how many of you would like me to do it twice a week rather than just once? Susan Becker, thanks a lot. Robbie Robin says, that's okay with me. Nisi says, yes, please. I think it'll take a really long time to get through it all if it's just once a week, because there is quite a lot. And you start to sort of forget. A week is quite a long time where you can kind of forget. Susan Baker says, smash the thumbs up. everyone so far says yes. So I don't want some of the members to miss it if it's that frequent, but so far so good. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try and do the next live on Wednesday. So that's 3 days from now. So it'll be every Wednesday and every Sunday. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for the super chats. Thanks for tuning in. At one stage, I think we were at over 50 people listening in. So that's good enough for me. But it's always good to have an enthusiastic audience, even if it is less than 50 or almost 50, whatever it is. JC is Jean Karras. That's what that was about. Jean asked me to open a thread. I'm not sure if she contributed. Amy Hall, good to see you here as well. True Jedi Forever says, would love that. Sounds good. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. Take care. Hope the power stays on where you are. Hopefully ours will be on for at least the next little bit. It's winter setting in here, and that's always a difficult time, it seems, in terms of keeping the lights on. So I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to do tonight's live. I didn't know the power, it was off at 7 o'clock, off at 8 o'clock, off at 9 o'clock. And then I thought, wow, this live needs to start in about 2 hours. And then about 15 minutes later, it came on. But it could just as easily have not come on. And I would have felt quite bad about that because I know you guys were waiting for this. Okay, guys, Nisi, everyone else, take care. See you guys next time. Hopefully we'll see Stephanie and get a report from her on what she saw. So hopefully we'll be able to do that once she's home, settled, safe and sound. Take care. Bye.